This is the Amy Edwards Show, and I'm your host, Amy. This show is here to help all of us live our best life and feel amazing at absolutely every age. We focus on transformation and empowerment through practical tools, strategies, habits, and mindset shifts that will help you unlock your potential, build self-love, and embrace your unique journey. We'll cover everything from health and wellness to personal growth and spirituality with inspiring guests and real conversations. So if you are ready to level up, break out of your comfort zone, and make lasting changes, you're in the right place. It's never too late. In fact, some of your best days haven't even happened yet. Let's get to it. Love this moment and make the next one even shinier. Hello, and welcome to the show. Are you ready to harness your hormone health and get that in check? I am, because I feel like I'm always confused. So the more information and knowledge that we can have, the better. So let's welcome today Dr. Amy B. Killen. She is a leading longevity and regenerative physician with a specialty in hormones. She's also a keynote speaker. She is an entrepreneur like you would not believe, amazing woman, the founder and CEO of the Human Optimization Project, the co-founder and chief medical officer of Humanaut Health, and the co-founder of Reputable. I am so impressed. Amy, it is a joy to have you on today. Thank you for making time. I looked over our brief intake form where you answer a few questions when you book the show. And one of the things you said on there was welcome to your queen phase. I have to know more and start here because I feel that in my soul as a 52-year-old woman navigating all this. So tell me why you wrote that and what that means to you.
Yeah. So, I'm 49, so I'm in the same kind of age bracket there. And, I talk a lot about hormones.
You look amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, so do you. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
So, when we think about hormones in women, we know that the estrogen and progesterone are made in your ovaries, right? And that as you run out of eggs during perimenopause and then essentially into menopause, that you lose the ability to make estrogen, especially. And estrogen, acts as this shield, kind of protecting various parts of your body, your brain, your blood vessels, your pelvic floor, your skin. And when that shield is gone, you really lost something pretty important. I think a lot of women don't realize that shield was there until it goes away. And so I was thinking about that one day, and I thought about how when that shield goes away, it's almost like, it kind of made me mad. Like, why is nature tying our fertility to our vitality in this way? Like, why is nature saying, once you can't make children anymore, then your health is going to decline and you're going to feel pretty bad? And I started thinking about, like, why would nature do that? And it came to me that's kind of like nature, like looking us, square in the eye and saying, you aren't a princess anymore. Like, you've had help along the way. You've had estrogen there this whole time and you didn't know it, but it was helping you. But now it's actually time for you to protect yourself. And so now you've kind of entered this queen phase where you have to be more proactive and you have to protect your own health by any means, because if you don't, no one else is going to at this point. So that's where queen phase came from.
Do you feel that queen phase? Do you feel it? Because I really like that. And I think that's a great mental shift to empowering yourself with knowledge. One of the things on your Humanaut site that I really liked was it said something like, stop wondering or stop guessing, right? Start knowing. And I just thought that was so powerful. And that's part of this like taking charge queen attitude, which I stepping into that phase has surprised me, like how good it feels, and learning more about my own health. So let's jump in. Let's ask what the most common mistakes that you see are, and let's kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that in midlife, and it's different for women than men, men's hormones, they kind of slowly, testosterone primarily, kind of slowly goes down starting at age 25. So every year it's a little bit less, but it's like a kind of a slow creep. Versus women's hormones, when you hit perimenopause and then eventually menopause, your estrogen and progesterone kind of fall off a cliff. Like, it goes from being kind of up here to all of a sudden, like, you just don't have any. And one of the things that I think is really important for women to understand is that lifestyle is very important. which I think most people do. But unfortunately, lifestyle, even perfect lifestyle, cannot bring back those lost hormones for women. And this is different than with men. Oftentimes with testosterone in men, if you exercise more, you get bigger muscles, you sleep better, you reduce your stress. Oftentimes they can increase their testosterone just by leading this very healthy lifestyle. But women don't have that same capacity with hormones. Like we cannot make estrogen and progesterone because, we've run out of eggs, which make them. And so there's kind of this mental shift, I think, that's important for women to understand that yes, healthy lifestyle is so important, but also considering bioidentical hormones and taking hormones is also really important because you can't make those hormones on your own.
You know what? That was one of my questions because I follow this woman on Instagram. She's been a guest on this show, and she preaches that menopause is like a myth or something. She's got something like that. And she was putting out content saying that basically women just need to have more sex and more orgasms, and then you're basically going to produce everything you need. And I really felt like, really, like, I guess I just was confused by that. So hearing you say that, that was one of my questions today was like, do we just need to have a whole bunch more sex and orgasms or something? Because I saw you have a viral video that talked about the relationship between sex and longevity. So
Yes.
what do you have to say to like what she's saying?
I mean, first of all, yes to more sex and orgasms.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
There are a lot of associations between sexual health and sexual vitality and overall health and vitality and longevity. Certainly, those things are related. But unfortunately, although orgasms can give us dopamine, they can give us oxytocin, they can help with serotonin, like some of these neurotransmitters that make us feel good, they don't increase your estrogen. And really after menopause, the only way you're getting estrogen, and estrogen for women is kind of the key hormone. Certainly progesterone, testosterone are also important, but estrogen is really the one that when it's gone, you miss it. And unfortunately, after menopause, the only estrogen you're getting is coming from conversion of testosterone from your fat primarily. So interestingly, women who are overweight tend to have a little bit higher estrogen because they're making it from fat. But even then, here's what's interesting. A middle-aged man, say 55-year-old guy, his estrogen level is higher than a 55-year-old woman's estrogen.
That's so jacked. What was nature thinking?
I don't
Like,
know.
thanks
Well,
a lot.
I think that nature was just nature wanted us to have babies.
Yeah.
And then, basically by the age 50, like you're dead.
Yeah.
And we've kind of we've kind of turned things up on its head. And so now we have to figure out, well, what do we do for that next 50 years of our lives? What do we do to feel better? Because nature wasn't thinking about that when we were created.
How do you get a baseline of where you are on estrogen? Because I've tried, I do my blood work and all those things. And I think Humanaut provides all those services. So I know that it can fluctuate throughout the month and stuff. So how do you get a good read on that?
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, blood testing is what we do primarily. You can also get, urine tests or saliva tests are also able to calculate those. But in perimenopausal women, the hormones estrogen, progesterone are going up and down every day. You can have one that's really high, one that's low, and then the next day they can switch. I mean, they're all over the map, which is why perimenopause is so chaotic for women.
Yeah.
Like you can't really plan. Like you don't know how you're going to feel tomorrow, how you're going to look. You have no idea. Once you get to menopause, which is technically defined as 12 months without a period, so that's menopause. In menopause, you have very low to no levels of estrogen, estradiol, and progesterone. So, I tell patients, we can check those hormones in perimenopause, but you kind of have to just look at them and be like, well, I don't know what to make of this, but the treatment is always the same. It's lifestyle plus. Usually, it's progesterone in early perimenopause. We may add testosterone as well, but we do check the hormones just to see where they are. But it's really most important later on when we're giving you hormones to kind of make sure that we're staying in the realms that are not only helping you with symptoms, but also helping to prevent chronic diseases like heart disease and dementia and osteoporosis and things like that.
Let me ask you how you got here, right? Because I know that you left your ER position in, I think, 2013. So what shifted in you to want to move toward this?
Yeah, I was an ER doctor for about 10 years. I practiced in Austin, actually, there at St. David's Hospital in Austin.
Oh my God, I
And
had both my kids there.
oh
Yep.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Fantastic job, great career. But then I have three kids, and I had three kids within 2 years. So I had twins and then one more. And
Oh,
when my third, I know,
I was like, wait, the math is.
yeah. When my third child was born, a week later, my husband had to move out of state for a job, and so I was, kind of sole caregiver for these three kids. I had to be at work at 4 in the morning because my shift
Oof.
started at 4, and I was working a very high stress job. And I was I was getting burned out, as you can imagine, like not sleeping more than 3 hours a night. Drinking soda all day, not exercising, just kind of like my own health was suffering. And I remember one day I was in the ER and I was looking out at the waiting room of all the patients who were waiting to be seen. And I realized that if I didn't make some serious changes in my life, that I was going to be one of those people in 5 years or 10
Wow.
years with a chronic medical problem that probably could have been prevented with enough education and resources and such. So I decided then to start learning about preventative medicine, longevity medicine, all of these, whatever you want to call it, functional medicine, so that I could get healthier myself. And then I eventually left the ER so that I could bring that to other people.
That's incredible. I mean, it's so ironic, right? And then just just a doctor having that shift is so important. I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of colleagues that still haven't had that shift or maybe operate in this old mindset. And I think we're seeing this start to happen. So good job. That's all
Thank
I
you.
guess I
Yeah.
have to
I mean,
say.
the ER is it's an interesting place because I would see people over and over again, for problems. And unfortunately, we weren't set
Uh,
up to be able to have long conversations with patients, to give them, a lot of our time. It's just not the place for that. And what I realized later is that these are long conversations. These require long appointments with patients. Like, you really, in order to understand what's going wrong with someone, you need to be able to sit down with them for an hour or 2 hours and like talk to them. And that's
yeah.
one of the things I think that just in medicine in general, especially kind of in the insurance model where you're having to go through insurance, is that those provider visits are, they're 10 minutes max. And that's just the way that they're set up and the way that they're reimbursed. And so one of the things that we've done at Humanaut is trying to make sure that we allot time for patients to be able to actually sit with the provider and tell us like what's going on. Give us like your whole story so that we can help to make the changes that need to be made.
Yeah, and that's really surprised me as I've gotten into this too about all the different things that can affect my estrogen. Oh, like, look, you're low in zinc, or I don't, I'm just using that as an example because I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly what it is. But there are all these other things that we can monitor and say, oh my gosh, well, that can affect, what's going on hormonally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything is so interconnected. And I think that's
Yeah.
another problem with traditional medicine is everything is very siloed. So you go to the cardiologist to look at your heart, you go to the, nephrologist for your kidneys. But oftentimes, no one is looking at the big picture. And if they are, they don't have time to really dive into the underlying, the little bitty things that are going on in your life that may be causing, problems that are then radiating out to all these systems.
Yeah, it's interesting you had to see that in yourself, to be like, "Oh, shit,
Yeah.
okay, this is what
Yeah.
we need to do." What has surprised you the most as you progressed on this, like, the wellness side of the journey?
When I first started doing this, I was really interested in hormones. This was back, 2013, and not everyone, hardly anyone was talking about
Mm-mm.
bioidentical hormones back in that day. And in fact, all of my friends and colleagues who were in medicine, would said I was crazy, I was a quack, like I was just, trying to make money. Like they would say crazy things. So they had no
Wow.
idea that this was an actual like these are actual medications. There's actually research behind this. So it's been fun and kind of surprising to see the adoption of like bioidentical hormone therapy, for instance, by mainstream medicine. So now you have regular gynecologists talking about it, neurologists, and these doctors who, for a long time, had kind of shunned this whole field of medicine. And so it's always fun to see people adopting something, that we learned was true a decade ago, and now we're starting to see other people doing it. So this whole field of longevity medicine, no one talked about longevity 5 years ago. even though, some doctors, we've been doing this for a while, but now if you go online, there's all of these people, Brian Johnson's talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
don't die, and you have all of these people in the longevity space, tons of funding is coming into the longevity space. So it's kind of surprising, but fun to see just the way that things are shifting in medicine, as well as kind of just in the general population, in terms of how we look at our health, and how we can be proactive and not just reactive to what's going on in our bodies.
Big time. I enjoyed watching the Brian Johnson documentary, Don't Die, that you referenced. I would tell people to watch it because it's just fascinating, like that he's doing it and stuff. I, know it's a man though. And I feel like, there's things that apply to women that are just so completely different, like what we're talking about. So I'm excited. I love that, you're doing it from the women's side of things. And it's fascinating how linked our hormones and longevity are, right? Did that kind of surprise you once you really learned the deep
Yeah.
connection?
I mean, I think that outside of a healthy lifestyle, taking hormones, bioidentical hormones, is the single best thing that women can do for their health. And I don't say that lightly. There are a lot of good drugs out there. There are a lot of, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but we have solid evidence that if you start estrogen within 10 years of menopause onset, so starting at early
Okay.
menopause, then we can reduce cardiovascular disease risk by 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And this is the disease that kills 1 out of 3 women. Like, this is the disease that we should be scared of, because it's the one that's probably going to kill you. And we can reduce your risk by almost 50% just by starting estrogen early.
That's fascinating.
And we can reduce, like, for instance, osteoporosis. My mom she fell in last year and broke her hip. And I've really been in the last year or so have become aware of how traumatizing, and horrible breaking a hip is. She broke her hip because she was one of the 20 million women in the US who was taken off of her estrogen back in 2002, when the big study came out and said that estrogen was dangerous. And no one came back later and corrected that, even though we learned that it wasn't. But she broke her hip, and this is an injury that could have been prevented with estrogen therapy. And now she has to walk with a cane, and she can't,
Shit.
she can't leave the sidewalk because she has to be flat. So all of a sudden, like, her world has constricted. Like, she can't go on these adventures that she used to go on, or hiking, or 5-mile walks, or all the things she used to do. But we could have prevented that. Estrogen therapy reduces osteoporotic fractures by 40%. And the most kind of shocking number is that we know that starting estrogen early in menopause reduces all-cause mortality rates in the studies by about 40%. So that's reducing the number of women who were dying during the course of the studies by 30 to 40% just by starting these hormones early.
I think that I never had that myth dispelled, like I feel like there's something still in me that's like, oh, but wait, it's
Yeah,
estrogen is like gonna make me get breast cancer, or something like
exactly.
that. I feel like I
Yeah.
have these things rattling around in my head that we got duped into believing. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
what happened was that, and you're not alone, by the way. Like, this is the most common and sort of dangerous myth out there, is that estrogen therapy causes breast cancer, hands down. What happened with the Women's Health Initiative was that study in 2002, and the study got stopped because they were seeing this trends towards increased breast cancer risk, and they got concerned, so they stopped the study early. Big press announcements were made, media. 80% of women who were on hormones stopped taking them. It was a whole thing. What we've realized since then is it wasn't the estrogen that was the problem. It was the synthetic progestin, which they gave with the estrogen, that was the problem. And in fact,
Oh,
the women who just took estrogen without that synthetic progestin, they had a 29% reduced risk of breast cancer.
wow.
And there's been now at this point about 10 randomized controlled trials showing that if you take estrogen by itself without this progestin, breast cancer risk goes down by about 23%. And now you do have to take some kind of progestin or progesterone if you're on estrogen and you have a uterus, because the estrogen can cause some changes in the uterus that can put you at risk for endometrial cancer, uterine cancer. But bioidentical progesterone, which is what we give now, doesn't cause that same increased risk in breast cancer. So, essentially, we have learned that estrogen doesn't cause breast cancer, but it takes a long time to get that information out to not just women, but their doctors. Doctors, even still just don't have the education they need in how to use these hormones. And that's something I hear from the women, on social media and my own patients, like they're struggling to find physicians who understand these hormones because, we just really don't.
And who even have the time to learn it, right? If you're so slammed with one patient after another and stuff, and you're not taking care of yourself, perhaps, in a high stress environment, like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do, right?
And it's not taught in like medical school and residency. I mean, I literally think I heard the word menopause maybe twice in all of my education. And of course, this was like 20 years ago, but
I mean,
they spend
yeah.
less than 2 hours talking about menopause or perimenopause, and 0 hours generally talking about the hormones that you can take, to help with these symptoms and chronic disease risk.
I'm so offended.
I know.
I know.
Me too.
So I interviewed a great functional nutritionist a while back, and she said, you're not as good as the supplements you take. You're as good as your absorption. And you had an Instagram reel where you were taking your progesterone with a healthy fat. I thought this was really fascinating. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. I'm not taking any, and side note, you can answer this too. I'm not taking any estrogen right now, but I do take topical testosterone. Is there a way for me to maximize that with something in my diet too, to absorb better?
Testosterone, I mean, if you're taking it through the skin, the main way to increase absorption is to make sure you're taking it on like thinner skin, skin
Okay.
that doesn't have like a lot of hair follicles or kind of thicker skin.
Usually
Or
like here.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great place. Or if you want even better absorption, as long as it's a cream and it's allowable, is you can put it on the vulva, so like the external genitalia, and you'll get even better absorption there than you will like on your arms or places like that. So that's an
Okay.
area that's really great for absorbing as long as the formulation allows for that. But yeah, the skin and the skin is a great place for testosterone, but everyone's absorption is so different. And I really recommend. I tell people like get your levels checked, like get your testosterone level checked before you start, and then have it checked periodically every 3 or 6 months or so, because some people absorb it like gangbusters, and then some people you're just slathering it on multiple areas of their body, and it's not doing anything.
Wow. Well, what about like eating the healthy fat with progesterone like you did?
So yeah, this is one of those kind of tricks that's not really talked about. And actually, on the label of progesterone, it will say to eat it with an empty stomach. And the reason for that is because fat, any kind of fat, will increase the absorption of progesterone. And so we know from studies that you can increase absorption by even up to like 20 times. Just by taking a little bit of fat in the like 30 minutes before you take the progesterone.
Wow.
And whether or not this gives you fewer symptoms, more symptoms, no symptoms, that hasn't really been studied, but it's one of those things that if you enjoy progesterone before bed and it helps with your sleep and it makes you calm down and you feel good on it, maybe try taking it with, a little bit of peanut butter or avocado or some kind of like, small healthy snack, and see if it helps with your sleep or your symptoms.
Why does it do that? That's so wild.
I don't know. It's a progesterone is just it's absorbed well with fat, and it's the drug makers say don't eat with it because they need to be able to show kind of the same absorption for every person. And if you're using peanut butter and I'm using something else, you're going to have different absorption levels. But it's a super safe drug medication, so it's one of those things that I think it's fair to play with it if you want to.
Well, you mentioned sleep. Do you want to nerd out on sleep and sexual health for a second? I'm a sleep freak. Like that is a key to life for me. So yeah.
It is. I am too. And when I left the emergency department in 2013, that was the first time I had slept well, in a decade. And all this, I felt like,
And you had 3 kids. That's
and I had
saying
3 kids.
something.
They were little at the time, so I wasn't sleeping all that well.
No.
But once I started sleeping, and I'm sure that you've had this too, I realized that it made everything else better. Like
Everything.
without even changing my diet, I lost 5 pounds. And and had
When you're tired, you're just shoving things in your face.
you make bad decisions. Like we have so much research. I think that sleep and social connections are the two kind of like most important pillars when we look at like lifestyle pillars. Certainly diet's important, exercise is very important. Like all of these things are very important. But for me, sleep is one of the top ones.
Yeah, it seems like kind of like a chicken and egg, maybe with hormones. I don't know. Like, I mean, I know that good sleep affects your hormones, and then hormones affect your good sleep. So,
Yeah.
how do you kind of recommend navigating that arena?
Yeah, you're totally right. It is a chicken and egg effect.
Hmm.
And I think especially for women in like perimenopause and early menopause when, you're losing your key hormones, progesterone is great for sleep. And when you lost that, that becomes difficult, but also estrogen is important for sleep. And if you don't have it, you can start having, the hot flashes and night sweats and waking up
I do.
multiple times. And it's,
Just my
yeah,
chest, just my chest and my back. It's like I have like
yeah.
a heat in the middle of my body. It's so
I have the
weird.
same thing. I'm perimenopausal. So I'm just taking
Me
progesterone
too.
and testosterone right now. But I'm starting to think about estrogen because I do have the same thing. I'll wake up and be like, not like drenched, but like a little bit sticky. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what is happening here? This is not how I
It's
sleep.
so weird. And it's not every night. It's just
No,
sometimes.
it's not
Right.
every night.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sleep is super important. I think that once you start getting on the right hormones, then you start sleeping much better. And we know that that obviously affects so many parts of your life. Yeah, it's so important.
Really, truly. Do you take anything to help you sleep, or do you kind of try to stay away from? I personally try to stay away from that. I really value my natural sleep so much, and I prize it, like, like, what do you recommend to people if somebody's listening is like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping or something?
I like magnesium a lot, so I take
Oh,
magnesium
I do take
glycinate
that.
at night,
Yeah.
and that's it's not a sedative by any means, but it has like
Mm.
a little bit of a calmingness to it. It's also just good for we know we need magnesium anyway, so I do take that at night. I take progesterone most nights, and those are the only two things I take. I do think that melatonin can be helpful. Certainly, we make melatonin less and less as we get older, especially
Mm.
postmenopausal women make a lot less than premenopausal, and that is important for sleep. But I don't take it every night. I try to just use some like kind of like minimalist approach to sleep as long as it's not really bad for several nights in a row.
Yeah. Okay. Since we're in the bedroom, let's talk more about sex. And because you talk a lot about like intimacy and sexuality, as a cornerstone of your vitality. So, can you talk about the research there and your perspective on that and prioritizing the impact of intimacy?
Yeah. I talk about sexual health, and I think it's so important to understand like sexual health to me doesn't necessarily mean that you even have a partner. It doesn't,
Good. I wanted to ask that.
yeah, no,
Great.
it's
Great.
really about like that sexual system, like the whole system that interacts with your sexual organ. So that's your pelvic floor, that's the blood flow that gets there, that's your hormones, that's your mental and emotional health, that's your kind of feelings around sex and sexuality and like
Mm.
how comfortable you feel in your body. So it's not necessarily about having a partner and having a lot of sex. It's more about having a healthy relationship with sex and having like all the organs working properly. Because if we know that, I think of sexual health as being kind of at the middle of this like sort of wheel, if you will. And it's influenced by your physical health and your mental health, your emotional health, your relationship health, so social health, as well as your spiritual health and even environmental health. All of those things influence how sexually healthy you are. And so we know that if everything is in line, if you have a healthy sex life, whether it's alone or with someone else, that means that probably all those things that are contributing to sexual health are in a good place, right? Like
Mm.
if you don't have enough blood flow going to your vagina and clitoris, then you're not going to have orgasms. And maybe the blood flow is also not going to your heart and your brain enough. Like we're all interconnected. So I think it's just important to think about sexual health. And there's also quite a number of studies that show associations, at least, between being sexually active and living longer, living better, both men and women. Whether it's that you have lower blood pressure, lower stress, less depression, stronger relationships that last longer, even a better immune system. In one study, when you have sex or have orgasms at least, once a week or so. So I think it's just important to talk about it. It's one of those subjects that some people shy away from, and they get like nervous about it. But I like to think of it as like it's a health. Sexual health is just one of the many kinds of health that we should be talking to our doctors about if it's not where we want it to be.
Ugh, I love that so much, and I like this mindset shift of, oh, it's one of the systems, and like, is it running optimally? And that can kind of maybe make people a little more comfortable with it. I talk about it a lot on this show because it is a fact of our human existence, and so it's important to our happiness, and yes, to our longevity. And so, like, I don't know, I constantly talk about it because
Yeah.
we need to, right? I just think, especially as we age,
Yes.
I don't want to lose that. So, yeah. Okay.
And about 50% of women, when they go through kind of the perimenopause, menopause transition, stop having sex, or at least don't have it very often. Some of them return to it later on, but it's, the numbers are they're pretty low. It's like 30 to 40% of women, over 50 or 60, they're just not interested and don't have sex. And that's, again, I think it's personal preference, and I'm not here to say that someone is right or wrong, but I just want women to have options. Like, if this is something that you want to continue to do and you
Yeah.
think is important, like, just know that we actually have a lot of tools, a lot of things that we can do to help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, you don't have to just accept it like, okay, that phase of my life is over, right? We can,
Exactly.
and you don't have to like grieve it or something, right? We can step into taking control. That's part of that queen phase, right? Step into taking control of it.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm curious. I hear like women are having best sex of their lives on into, decades,
Yeah, I
forever
mean,
decades.
there are some people, that I've heard the stories of the nursing homes who get overridden with
Yeah.
sexually transmitted infections because they're so sexually active. So I love it. I'm all for it. Like, let's just continue. And I think too, to your point, our sexuality and like being able to have this with a partner or by yourself, it's one of those things that make us truly human, and that we can't replicate it with with computers or AIs or digital interfaces or social communities online or things like that. And so I think it's important that we hold on to that piece of ourselves, especially as we're becoming closer and closer to sort of all this digital AI age that is upon us.
Yeah. How do you personally balance all of this? Like, I mean, because, sometimes it can feel overwhelming. So, as a woman, you've got your mom, and, I don't know if you're in a
Yep.
relationship.
Married.
So, yeah. So, how do you navigate this and keep balance of these different facets for yourself? And what do you recommend to people?
I mean, sometimes I don't feel like I do a very good job balancing
I
all of
think
this.
that's normal, right? I think if you said
Yeah.
anything else, we'd probably be like, "Oh, really?" You know?
Yeah.
So,
I think that with sexual health is interesting because you do have to think about it, especially if you're juggling a lot of stuff in your lives and, kids and jobs and, travel and all this. And some people, you know, the idea of like scheduling sex makes people like a little uncomfortable. They're like, you shouldn't have to schedule it. But then I'm like, yeah, but if you saw my schedule, like if I don't schedule it, it's not going to happen.
right. I mean, yeah.
So I think
So
scheduling it sometimes is totally fine, or just leaving a little bit of space, whether it's for sex or just like hanging out with your partner or doing fun things. Or, I think a lot of people our age start to kind of get bored with their partners, men and women, and you've been with them for a long time, maybe. So it's always important to think back to what can I do to make this more interesting? Like, should we be going skydiving together? I don't know. Like, what should we be doing?
no, it's true, and it's important. I mean, I think just like when we have these conversations, it gets people thinking, and that's even key. Like if somebody's listening to this right now, you're thinking about it. It's like at least, putting it out there in the universe. I'm pretty woo, Amy. And so, it's putting it out there so the universe is going to step up to answer your questions, which can
Yeah.
also happen with our health questions too, right? Once we show that curiosity. If somebody is, feeling like they don't know where to start with their longevity and all the rest of it, what do you tell them about where they should start if they want to reclaim their own vitality?
Yeah. I think the first step is finding a medical provider who you can work with. Maybe not the first step, but it is a step. And the first step is just reading and learning about your body and about, like there's a lot you can do on your own, YouTube
Podcasts.
videos and podcasts. Like there's so
Your
many things.
Instagram is fabulous.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
so
Thank you.
good. So
So
good.
you can learn a lot on your own and kind of feel, at least get to the point where you're ready then to get some help potentially. But ultimately, we do want to have a partnership with medical providers that can, help with getting the labs that you need. Like maybe it's usually going to be more, I think, more than just the regular labs that you might get from a regular doctor. Like there's so many lab tests that we can do that give us a little more information about risk factors and how to, what's wrong with you potentially, or hormones or things like that. So getting comprehensive labs at least once a year, and then being able to also have access to other tests. Like for women, I think DEXA scans are so important, which is DEXA
I've been
scan
hearing a lot about
looking
this.
about,
I want
yeah.
to do it.
I
I
mean,
haven't done it.
unfortunately, the recommendation currently, kind of the medical guidelines, don't recommend DEXA scanning until you're like 65. But DEXA scans are looking at your
Huh.
bone density, and they're looking at your muscle mass density, and as well as your fat, like your visceral fat and your subcutaneous fat. And so, women lose bone mass in the years before menopause. And then once menopause hits, you lose about 10% of your bone mineral density in those first couple of years. And this is, it's devastating. And what's
Yeah.
even crazier is I've seen, I saw last week we had a 30-year-old who has osteoporosis, and she looks healthy from the outside, but we did a DEXA scan, and her bone mineral density is extremely low, and she has literally has osteoporosis, and so she's at very high risk. We can turn these things around. Like if we know they're there, we can turn around osteoporosis. There's with hormones and lifestyle and supplements. So DEXA scanning is something that you can get done. It's less than $100. You can go to gyms to get it done. Like it's not a big deal, but I really believe in that. And some of the other kind of advanced tests I like the VO2 max test, which is a test you've probably seen people do it. Like you're on a treadmill, you're wearing a crazy
I've done
mask,
it. I've done it.
and you have to go really hard. It's looking at your cardiorespiratory fitness, and we know from studies that VO2 max is probably the closest thing that we have that correlates to your longevity, meaning that higher VO2 max is correlated very strongly to a longer life. And something else, of course, that we can affect, like if you exercise in the right way, that you can increase VO2 max, and that's going to have a very beneficial effect. But if you don't measure it, then you don't know where you are and what to do about it. So things like that, having some access to advanced tests, which we do at Humanaut, as well as the advanced blood tests and maybe other things. But just, you don't want to just necessarily go out and do all the things if you don't, but you need to have someone who could help you to interpret all of those results that are coming back from all those various tests. Otherwise, it gets very confusing and overwhelming.
Yeah, and you don't want to get confused and overwhelmed. And I mean, I have a little bit of like bury my head in the sand tendencies sometimes. Like I
Yeah.
hear you start listing off what DEXA scan measures, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to know. So I have to shift. I have to shift myself a little bit. Like, no, knowledge is power, right? So
Exactly.
then
Exactly.
we know where we are and what we can work toward. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
really that's important. So Humanaut is I use a different company that I've used in the past anyway, but I'm guessing you have a compounding pharmacy
We have a
that you
couple of
work
different
with?
compounding pharmacies. Yeah, we work with we work with both traditional pharmacies, like just regular pharmacies, plus compounding pharmacies, and we like the kind of the flexibility of being able to work with the patient, and depending on their budget and their needs, we have a bunch of different options for medications.
I like basically everything I'm using right now is from compounding pharmacies. What's the difference? And you had something on your Instagram about this. That's why I wanted to ask about it in case anybody's heard anything and they're trepidatious around that.
Yeah. So, there's regular pharmacies are, your Walgreens, your CVS, like your big
Mhm.
pharmacies, and they carry pharmaceutical options. And, this is we'll talk about hormones primarily because this is the field I'm in. But with hormones, for instance, you can get bioidentical progesterone and estradiol at like a regular pharmacy that's made by a big pharmaceutical company. And they're great options. Insurance will cover them oftentimes. But then you also have these other pharmacies called compounding pharmacies, where you have the pharmacist essentially takes the prescription from the doctor, which can be very specific. Like I can say, you know what, I want this dose of progesterone, and I want it to be in this specific base that I think is really good for, this for absorption through certain types of skin. And I want to put it, you can essentially modify the different delivery routes, the doses, the bases, like all different things. And the physician orders it, and then the pharmacist actually mixes that up to create kind of your own personalized medication.
It's like bespoke.
It is. It's like a bespoke medicine. And some doctors in traditional medicine, kind of like poo-poo compounding pharmacists and say,
of course they do.
say like, oh, it's more dangerous. Like you shouldn't do that. But there's no truth to that. Like both options are fantastic, and we like
because every drug pharmaceutical is real safe. Like come on.
There's risks with everything. There's risks with compounded medications. There's risk with other medications. But I think that it's important if you're doing hormone therapy to have a physician who is comfortable working with a compounding pharmacy, as well as comfortable giving you pharmaceutical options, because there are some great ones out there, and they can be less expensive and easy to get. So just having both of those options, I think, is really important.
Cool. Very cool. What have we missed? Is there anything that we didn't get to that we really need to talk about before we go today, or just anything you want to say before we go?
A couple of things. So please follow me on Instagram, Dr. Amy B. Killen. I do a lot of educational stuff. I'm a little silly sometimes.
Awesome. It'll be in the show notes. People can click right on it. Yes.
I also have a female focused kind of a longevity supplement called Hop Box, which is a lot of fun, super easy, makes it simple for women who are interested in, just take 2 packs a day and be done with it kind of thing. But it has all of my favorite ingredients, because I created this myself a few years ago. So that is awesome. And then if you are in Austin, we have a Humanaut Health there. That's our first location. We have another one opening in South Florida in a couple of months. But if you're interested in having someone help you and kind of be your co-pilot with health, helping you with getting the labs and the testing done, and then also working with you, with everything from hormones to peptides to regenerative medicine, stem cell medicine, lifestyle, all of those things. We've kind of put it all together in one place, and it's pretty fun. We do see, anyone in Texas or anyone in nearby states, we can see you. So come check us out, and we would love to see you.
Very cool. Well, what would you like to leave people with as we go today? Like, is there any just empowering message or something on your heart that you want to leave people with before we go?
Yeah, I was thinking today about how as women, as we get older, we kind of start to like shrink, like, where our brain starts to shrink and our bones start to become more fragile, and we start to literally shrink in size, and our skin shrinks, and also kind of the world around us that we inhabit starts to shrink. Like we don't go as far, we don't go on as many adventures, we kind of stay close to home. And I think that it's so important for us to remember that we don't have to shrink. Like we actually can make the choice to keep growing, to keep our brain expanding, to keep our muscles expanding, to keep, to continue to venture out, to go to the parties, to meet your friends. Like don't stay at home on your couch, even though it's more comfortable. And that this is a choice that we can make, but it's a choice we have to make every day to continue to grow and expand and not let ourselves shrink. And again, it kind of goes back to owning this phase of your life. It's kind of stepping into this queen phase where you're not going to let anyone tell you how small you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to act.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Like, we don't have to shrink, we can grow, like, for our whole life. Do you have any women that are, doing that you really look to, that you feel like inspire you?
Oh, there's so many women. I look at people. I'm trying to think of people like I can't think of anyone off the top of my head all of a sudden now that
I put you on the
talking to you.
spot.
I know. I should have thought
did.
ahead of time.
No,
Gabby
okay.
Reese is one actually that I
Oh,
look at a lot. Like I
yes.
think she's so beautiful at that. Like she is so strong, and she's so powerful, and she's also very happy with kind of where she is. But she also like works very hard to. And I don't even know Gabby, but hi Gabby. So people
My
like that.
my fiance does, and
Oh,
and
fantastic.
he's actually gone and done like protocols with her,
Yes.
and her husband is the
Laird.
hot surfer. Yeah,
Yes.
Laird. Yeah, and so he's like gone and done that. They're like diligent too. I mean, it's like
I know. It's so impressive.
cold hot, like it's intense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah,
admire her.
Me too. She is a great choice and just such a strong, powerful woman. So that is beautiful. Well, thank you. Everything that you mentioned is going to be in the show notes too. So if anybody heard anything and they're curious about learning more, I would say just click on something and go down the rabbit hole. You will find so much incredible content. So, Amy, I can't thank you enough for all that you do and all that you shared today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, really informative and so crucial to stepping into this just regal phase of life. So, let's embrace it. I'm all about it. So, thank you to everybody that showed up today. No need to shrink. Keep growing. Keep shining brighter. Just some of your best days haven't even happened yet. So, let's see what those look like. So, follow Amy and thank you so much for being here. Keep shining bright. Till next time. Thank you so much for being here. Please rate, review, and follow us. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Keep shining bright.